quickly here before we do that. John, just want to get you on record here. You think we're completely insane? Welcome back to one of our signature episodes here on both Dunc'd On Prime and Hollinger and Duncan. If you're new to the show, we do basically everything that you need to follow NBA news. That includes scouting reports. It includes gamers. It includes positional breakdowns like what we're doing here. It includes draft scouting. It includes salary cap analysis. We have the mock off-season, the mock trade deadline, some of our other signature episodes. So highly recommend if this is your first time tuning in that you give Dunc'd On Prime a try. You can get ad-free 6 days a week of podcasts, or you can just subscribe to the free feed and give us a like or subscribe on YouTube as well. Hit that little bell for notifications when we either go live or when a new episode drops. All right, gentlemen, I am really looking forward to this. I think we're going to see a lot of movement from where we had things last year. John, before we begin, though, are there any just general principles that you wanted to articulate? Anything that's standing out for you about this analysis before we really dive into it? Maybe things that might have changed in some way based on how the game has changed? Anything you wanted to give a little preview?
I think availability is going to play a big role, right? We have a lot of elite players who have missed time. Obviously, we had 2 massive Achilles injuries since the last time we did this. But even beyond that, Giannis hasn't played much this year. You know, Kawhi just went out again. Jayson Tatum just returned. Steph Curry's been out. I think that's going to factor into a lot of this, especially as we get further down the board.
Deni?
Well, along the lines with what John said, it's the kind of the aging of some of these players. And so it's not just, oh, this guy is hurt right now. It's this guy is, Steph Curry is going to be this. We're kind of gaming this out for his age 37 season. Like that's a different thing than, oh, a guy has runner's knee and he's 25. And so, we're trying to do this like a whole season in the playoffs. And so how much a player can play and whether you think they're going to be available, that does matter. And I mean, we could do some of the standard, the availability matters. We do improve their injuries, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for Danny and I are in the midst. We still have point guards to go. We've done 4 of the positions now with our position rankings, and this is basically the same format. So what we are doing in this exercise is we are saying, let's pretend a season begins today. Which player would you most want to have on any team to try to win the most games and obviously give yourself the best odds at winning a championship? And so if guys are injured, Tyrese Halliburton, for example, is out right now. Jayson Tatum just came back. So basically you're imagining Jayson Tatum is at the point he's at right now, but a season is starting, a full season training camp going through to a playoffs that begins right now. So for someone like Halliburton, someone like Jimmy Butler, we'll say, let's pretend they've recovered from the injury and they are just coming back playing their first games right now at the start of a fictional season. So you can price that in however we want to. You could say, hey, he's going to need some time to ramp up, but you could say he might get injured again. You could say his performance might be a little bit lower, but we are assuming that they have recovered from whatever specific injury they have right now in this analysis. So again, some guys who are older, you might say, hey, you know what? They're playing pretty well right now. What do they look like at the end of a season that started right now? Or some younger guys, they reasonably could improve over that period of time. So the other thing we'll say is we usually do this in tiers. So the idea of a tier is that you could reasonably argue that one person or the other could be higher. You have to do a ranking within that tier, but you think it'd be reasonable to rank one above the other. When you go down to the next tier, you're like, no, I think the players in tier 1 are clearly better than the players in tier 2. John, do you want to start us off here with your tier 1 number 1?
Wow. Well, only one player has scored 80 points in a game in the last couple of weeks, so I think it's pretty clear who my pick should be.
The Wizards defense?
Yes. Tier 1 is interesting because there are two guys in it for me. A third guy is making a case to join it, but I'm not sure if he's quite there yet. And it's kind of gone back and forth in my head over the course of the year who is the more deserving. But I think he's a little bit younger and a little bit more viable at both ends of the court. So I'm going to go with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over the Joker here. That I don't want to be swung just by that OKC Denver game, which is an absolute barn burner, one of the best regular season games of the year. I just feel like him adding more threes to his mix has now made him even more potent. I think defensively, he's still he's pretty active. He's hard to pick on, even though teams kind of try to, because there's not that many options against that defense. And I think he's gotten a little better as a distributor too, which was kind of, he's played more as a scorer for that team. But so all in all, and because he plays better as a distributor, I think it's harder to run extra guys at him, which is the thing you really want to do. So he's my pick for number one.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say, we talked about this pretty extensively, John. I'll credit you for the way that you articulated this last year, which I thought was the best I'd heard, is just the idea that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the best player on a 65, even a 70 win team by point differential. Can Nikola Jokic ever be that, given some of his defensive deficiencies, given that he plays center? He certainly was good enough to win a championship. He's basically, you're going to have the number one offense in the league whenever you have him. But what's the most games that Nikola Jokic has ever won in his career? I think it was like 57, I want to say. And so that I think does matter to some degree. And he has certainly more weaknesses than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in terms of being targeted. So I had Shai number one last year as well. I will hold my pick in abeyance here. Danny, do you want to weigh in on Shai versus Jokic?
I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over Nikola Jokic, and I believe I didn't last year. We'll go through our kind of rehash it afterwards. And Shai has had a wonderful 12 months since the last time we did this. I mean, he was the best player on the team that won the championship, and then he has been the best player in the league this year. And Nate, as you mentioned, like what John said on this podcast a year ago has been ringing through my head this whole year, which is basically it is easier to build a great and elite championship team around Shai than it is around Jokic. And that does not mean that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a defense unto himself. It just means that if you put capable defenders around him, you can have a really good defense. And so that is fundamentally different. And the other thing that I think is a really strong argument in favor of Shai is that his clutch performance this year has been massive. And so they've needed him to do a lot. When Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been on the floor, the Thunder haven't needed a lot of clutch time, but 64% true shooting on 43% usage and a 124 offensive rating. And so that, and I believe in a lot of that. And I think, and with J-Dub basically missing this season being worse than when he played, and AJ Mitchell missed a lot of this season too. Like they've needed it to be Shai. It has been Shai and he's done great. I mean, John invoked that OKC Denver game, and I think there's a reason for that too. And so for me, and this is a marked change from where things were a year ago, the question was not 1 versus 2. The question was, is Jokic still in the same tier as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Because not only is that I think Shai's been better this year than he was last year. Like we don't do the improvement score on this like we do in prospects, but his scores would be very good. It's that Jokic, he still is a fantastic offensive player, but I think he's taken a little bit of a step back defensively. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt in terms of him coming back from this knee injury. And, that's a part of our exercise is that you recover from the injuries you're dealing with. But he's also at the age where this might just be a thing. And so Jokic being the best offensive player in the league, and I still believe that he is, like, that's something, but the more you degrade him, like the strength of your strengths matters, but the strength of your weaknesses matters too. And so I considered having Jokic in a tier below, having it be Shai by himself, but I'm just not quite there yet. I wouldn't be surprised. In some ways I would be surprised if I didn't have that a year from now, because of just where these guys are going. But I think it's too early personally to do that right now.
We are saying this in the midst of a season where Jokic is on pace to break the record for player efficiency rating and inscrutable formula invented by 14th century Trappist monks.
Amazing.
And I will say he was destroying the record up until the point he got hurt. He has not been nearly as effective since he came back.
Yeah, I think he still is going to largely avoid injuries going forward. I mean, he just doesn't have that record. I know as you get older, you're more likely to get that, but someone fell into his knee. You know, that's I don't think of that as something that's going to recur unless you're Kevin Durant. Yeah, I mean, some of the numbers are just eye-popping. 68% true shooting, and I think the one thing that's changed a little bit is he's come down some with his shooting, and particularly his mid-range shooting and floater shooting. But no, I mean, he's the best offensive player in the world. Like, that is obvious. It really, what it comes down to, and I think Shai is number 2 at this point, but what it really comes down to is just what he is defensively in the playoffs, and how I think people can argue about how bad his defense is. I think it's gotten a lot worse, particularly night to night in terms of his effort level. And quite frankly, it really stands out when he plays against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, Shai has more talent around him on the defensive end. I don't know about on the offensive end at this point.
Yeah.
But Nikola Jokic, his struggles defensively, the fact that you just cannot allow him to be in an action with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I mean, that really just, and there are plenty of other guys that's the case for as well. And David Adelman and Michael Malone before have done a lot of tricks to try to keep Jokic out of the action. But then if you do break to the basket, he's pretty good with his hands, but opponent rim field goal per shooting is always going to be, well below the positional average for Nikola Jokic. And I do think also he's maybe not quite as unstoppable as he was before, just because more teams have come up with tactics like playing 2 bigs, like putting a strong wing on him, like just, putting a really small guy on him and just fronting him, basically fronting the post 25 feet from the basket. And he's not fast enough to like really cut back door in those circumstances. So there's been at least some slight amount of effectiveness against him at times. I mean, I don't want to overstate that at all, because like I said, he still is easily the best offensive player in the world because he doesn't have a weakness offensively. But I do think it's maybe in a playoff setting against a great defense, it's slightly muted. Whereas Shai, on the other hand, to me, I think he doesn't get enough credit for just the difficulty that he causes other teams schematically, where, I mean, you saw it against Orlando last night, which is essentially like a pretty good defense with pretty good defensive players. And Shai, just if you have one-on-one coverage against him, like, he's just going to get to a very good shot all the time. And so you almost have to just double team him 25 feet from the basket if you're going to stop him. And that, of course, opens up just like massive wounds in your defense for most teams. And so, I mean, there are maybe 5 guys in the whole league that I would trust to guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander one-on-one in an isolation. And then you can always just set a screen if that's the case. And so I think what he has done to teams, especially without another premium creator for most of the season, for them still to have a 120.5 offensive rating when he's on the floor, is pretty incredible. And I think there is maybe a little bit more resilience to his playoff offense just because he's a guard and you can just give him the ball more easily than Jokic, even if Jokic is going to be a much higher ceiling. I guess that I should probably, I've talked for a while here. Where did you guys have Victor Wembanyama?
I had him in his own tier at number 3.
Same. And Nate and I had an extended conversation about this in center rankings, and it's close. Like, I mean, Victor Wembanyama as a regular season player, the what he brings to the table defensively is truly special, and he's grown a lot as an offensive player. There's still real work to do, but he can be great. I happened to see him last night in person, and he just bent everything. I mean, the Kings are terrible, but he bent everything every second. And that is immensely valuable. The only reason that well, there are a couple, but the other 2 guys are incredibly good basketball players, is that, and John, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Like, does a player just conceptually have to prove anything in the playoffs before you put them in this group? Or is it something where, hey, if a guy is this good, they can earn it even before?
I think playoffs is one of the things that stops me from putting him in the tier with Jokic and Shea. Absolutely. I mean, because they've done it in not just done it in April, they've done it in June, right? And at the highest level. Victor, I think the underlying assumption is he'll be able to do it, but let's see what happens. Teams are going to throw all kinds of weird spaghetti at the wall to counteract him when they get into a playoff series and have to strategize just for him. And let's see how he deals with it.
I got a question for you guys. If let's base it solely on what each player has done when they've been on the floor this season, and Wembanyama is about 300 minutes behind Shai and Jokic, also plays about 4 fewer minutes per game than those guys do, which certainly we have to account for. But simply when they've been on the floor this season, do you believe that Wembanyama's performance has been the equal of Shai and Jokic, or at least arguably so? Like, if you're just saying what they did this regular season, is he in the same tier?
You'd have to give him a lot of credit for his defense, I think, to like a lot, like even beyond just like regular defensive player of the year. Which I mean, I guess there's some case for that. I have a hard time getting there. I think just this regular season, yeah, I'm like on my MVP ballot. If I had one, I would have him third.
Yeah, Danny.
It's a close call, but I think I'd have him about even with Jokic. I mean, Shai has been incredible in this regular season, and especially with the clutch. I mean, Wembanyama's done plenty of good stuff then too, but I would have it. I think I would probably have Shai a little bit above Jokic and Wembanyama in some order, but he's close. Like, I think the margin is closer in that framing than it is in best players.
So, yeah, this season, Victor Wembanyama has the best net rating of the three, plus 15.6. Shai is at 14.7. Jokic still at 10.7. He's actually a little bit down from where he's been, although they have had a lot of injury issues. And then the on-off, amazingly, Jokic is always the big leader in this stat. Victor is actually ahead of him there, too. 16.1 versus 15.3. Shai is at 9.8. A lot of that being just due to the floor that OKC has in terms of their defense. And in the 104 defensive rating that the Spurs have when he's on the floor, 116.5 when he's off. I mean, they have some other good defensive players, but I don't think they have another all defensive quality player. Steph Castle might be close if you were if you were breaking it out by position the way we used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think Steph Castle benefits a lot from the Wembanyama effect. So I'm toying with the idea that his defense in the playoffs maybe could be of the same magnitude as Shai's or Jokic's offense, because I just see teams go in there and he just ruins everything in a way that I just have not. And then you might be like, oh, well, you just get him away from the basket. No, he's actually like one of the absolute best isolation defenders in basketball as well, right? So if you look back at, say, Rudy Gobert at his best, you say, oh, well, you just set a screen up top with Steph Curry, and then we'll just shoot a three over him or get him out on the floor in isolation. And he's a pretty good switch defender, but he's not Wembanyama. Wembanyama really, it is very rare that guys are going to be able to attack him when he's locked in one-on-one. I'm interested to see how it works in the playoffs, right? Because he still is like a Colt in a lot of ways. He hasn't been stress tested. We haven't seen teams try to do like any kind of crazy shit, like just, like screening Gortat, screening him on every play. And, but I think like that kind of stuff might actually be required. And then what he's been doing offensively the last 2 months is also completely ridiculous. Now he's not known for his offense, but 32 usage and 62.5 true shooting is like pretty damn good, especially when you consider that he's also spacing the floor incredibly well at the center position for his teammates. So there's some addition there. So his offensive rating on floor, 119.6. It's only a point behind Shai, and you really would be hard pressed to find like who's another premium offensive player on this Spurs team. Like, I'm not like they have some depth, but they don't have another guy who's like really running everything that the defense is that worried about. So I think he's also really awesome in transition. So I think in the past I've maybe been a little guilty on this show of not looking forward enough and being like, hey, this guy's earned it. He's done X, Y, and Z in the playoffs. I think like I kind of gave Kevin Durant too much credence for a while there based on what he did in like the 21 playoffs, for example. So I am actually going to put Victor Wembanyama in this tier.
Woo.
And I also actually am ranking him number 2 ahead of Jokic by a hair's breadth.
Okay. I mean,
is that completely insane? I mean, I understand
the reason it is not completely insane is because there's a decent chance that when we do this a year from now, all 3 of us will have Victor number 1, right?
Yeah,
like that. We all see that as a very reasonable outcome, right?
Yeah, and it's just considering you're starting a season right now. Jokic is 31, Victor is 22. Now, Jokic is still a bet to play more games over a regular season than Wembanyama, but I just think like the guy pretty much has no weaknesses already. Maybe you could say like physical guys getting offensive rebounds would be the one thing that you could point to. But I mean, for the Spurs, who I would say are not a particularly talented team, to be this good when he's on the floor is absolutely remarkable. And I mean, you could see it one of two ways, right? You'd be like, all right, the playoffs are a different beast. He's never experienced it before. Or you could say, no, this guy's just going to break the game. And we always said, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen at some point in the future. Look out, world. I think we might actually be there. I'm just what he has done and just watching teams try to deal with him unsuccessfully these last 2 months. I'm buying into that. I may end up regretting it. I may be early on it, but he just is something that we've never seen before. And I want to respect that.
I'll say one more point on that. Been thinking about this. I've never said it on the pod yet. I think the Spurs are the second most likely champion this year because of the possibility that it is just that they could do it. And yes, they probably have to play the Thunder. Guess what? Almost any other team would too. And the idea that it might just be that stage, it's a distinct possibility. And it's so exciting. And I want to bring up one other quick thing with Wembanyama's offense, which is he's a fascinating test case for something that we've wondered about for years with Jokic, which is having a higher usage, but not truly a hub center that spaces the floor. How much extra Jokic is a great passer and all this stuff, but like the Spurs being this good offensively with Wembanyama on the floor when he's not Jokic is really fascinating to me because it's just like, well, okay, how much of the value add is the spacing and occupying, and how much of it is Jokic's otherworldly passing? He's the best passer in the league, and that will need more data on that. But it's a point that I've been fixated on the last month or so.
That's interesting. I mean, Joker before this season really didn't shoot many threes, so there almost wasn't that much of a spacing element before. It was really more about what he could do as an operator up there. But now you see him. I mean, he's shooting 40 or whatever from 3, and he's letting it rip a lot more often. Danny, when you said the Spurs would be number 2 on your title contenders, I presume the Atlanta Hawks were number 1, given that they haven't lost in weeks. Right?
Do they get to play the same schedule in the playoffs as they played in the last 11 games?
I think that's how it works. Yeah, I called the league about this and everything.
All right. So are we done on those top 3? So you had Victor in his own tier. You were the same, Danny, at number 3. I have Shai number 1, Victor number 2, Jokic number 3. John, who is your number 4?
I had 3 players in my next tier. They are the other 3 players who I think are just, when they play, are just freaking crushing the league and are head and shoulders above everyone else in sort of like the mere mortal category that we'll get to. But the healthiest of those 3 players and the youngest, and I would argue the one who's playing the best this season too, is Luka Doncic. So I had him at number 4.
I'm interested to see who. So who are those 3 guys actually, John? Before
Luka, Kawhi Leonard, and Giannis.
All right, I did not have Kawhi in that group. I would say like these. I'm kind of underwhelmed by all 3 of these next guys compared to obviously the top 3. I mean, they're just none of them are I think are anywhere close to there. Danny, how did that next group shake out for you?
It's pretty similar for me. So I have Giannis and Luka in that group as well, but I have Kawhi a little lower, primarily due to availability issues.
Mhm.
I have him, I think he at his best he can be there, but maybe that's being a little bit unfair to Kawhi. Then the other guy that I have in this group is Cade Cunningham. So I have a 3-player group, and so it's in tentatively the order is Giannis, Luka, Cade, but it could I could you guys could easily convince me to change the order.
Yeah, I had Cade in this group too, and I had Kawhi lower just due to the availability. To me, Kawhi, when he's been out there, has been the 4th best player in the league this year,
Yes.
just on a per minute basis. I think you would have to say that now. And I mean, the Clippers just are so much better when he plays. 12 points per 100 better. That's an elite number in this group, and his defense has ticked up a little bit, at least in terms of his steals, 2.2 per 36. I still don't think he's great on the ball at this point in his career. They don't want him doing that. But I think, especially because we're thinking of him on a random team, like the Clippers did start 6-21 this year. Like I think whether that's, and he missed some of that time, but he wasn't playing that well during the beginning of the season either. And so like that, like that is part of his record. I mean, he's been unbelievable for the last 3 months, but he wasn't out there. And then also I think just as a leader from an emotional perspective, I mean, I don't know how to handle the aspiration stuff. I don't give that specific thing like, oh, he might have his contract canceled. Like that's part of this. No, I'm not going there, but just that he's kind of, inscrutable. I don't think he's really great for your team's culture at this
Well,
point.
that's a good point, because he's like off on his own, like with the medical stuff. Like the team didn't know a lot of times if he was going to play or not. And couldn't find out from people who worked for the team because it was just kind of a decision that was being made outside the loop. So I think there's something with that. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, and even going back to that first year in LA too. I mean, I think maybe it was more Paul George that some of the existing players were complaining about, and they weren't that good. That was part of the reason they're complaining, probably. But Montrezl Harrell and Lou Williams and Marcus Morris, like let them complain. But yeah, I mean, and then you just still the health record of just not finishing a season until last year when he actually was not that great in the playoffs. He had one awesome game, and everyone's like, "Oh shit, Kawhi's back." He shot 15 and 19 for the field, and then he didn't really do that much after that. And he's not a great passer. A lot of his value comes from avoiding turnovers and kind of slowing the game down. But yeah, I mean, I agree. He's number 4. It's just, at age 34, how much do you really expect him to play? I mean, I think you give him a 50% chance of finishing every season at this point. So I think that's why he has to be lower than someone like Cade or Luka.
Well, and Nate, one other thing kind of on the Kawhi front is you think about so there are some players who are kind of like unassailable playoff performers, and they've done it. They've done it. Their teams have been great all the year. Kawhi Leonard's teams haven't always done that. I mean, I'll remember him being the best player on the champions in 2019 forever, but some of these other Clippers teams haven't really done that. Some of those years he hasn't. So yes, Kawhi at his best can be that, but even last year, you brought it up, it was a tough ask for them to win that series, but he wasn't killing it. It wasn't Kawhi's doing everything he can and it just got overcome. And so for me, that plus the availability plus the age, I have him below. But there's one other point I want to make about somebody not in this tier, but I'll wait until we've talked about some of the other gentlemen.
Yeah, John, you didn't have Cade in this group. I did as well. I had Luka 4, Cade 5, Giannis 6. Although I
can't believe you guys have Cade ahead of Ant. I am stunned.
Wow. Okay. Why?
Ant's just way more efficient right now.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I've obviously struggled with. Like Cade having 56.5% true shooting is definitely something that is, I would say, the lone black mark for him. Cade is also by far the most prolific passer in the league outside of Jokic. 21.9% passing creation, which is a stat that we keep here at using the tracking data measures essentially what percentage of a team's possessions does or plays, I guess we should say, does the player throw a pass that leads to a shot or free throws? So 21.9%. I mean, that is a crazy number. I think Cade gives you more on defense than Luka, or frankly than Ant does, especially particularly on a night-to-night basis and as a help defender. And the Pistons have a better offensive rating by 1.8 points with Cade on the floor than the Wolves do with Edwards. And I would say that Cade has far less offensive talent around him than Minnesota does with Edwards.
Nate hit a lot of my points, but I think that I've become less focused on a player's individual efficiency for a high usage guy and more about how well they perform as a team when he's on the floor. And so, I think that Cade Cunningham gets some of that benefit. The Pistons have pretty horrendous overall offensive talent. He helps give them a transition identity, which is really important. And Cade Cunningham is a vastly superior defensive player to Luka Doncic. I still have Luka ahead of Cade, but I'm not saying he's better than Anthony Edwards in a big game situation, if you could do that. But I think,
that's the best argument for Edwards to me, is he's just more resilient maybe in the playoffs.
Game to game, possession to possession, but the whole season counts. And I think that Cade Cunningham has been a better overall regular season defender this year than Anthony Edwards has.
I agree with you guys on Cade's defense. I mean, he is a savant as a shot blocker. For somebody who doesn't have like crazy spring, like his timing is unbelievable. A 2.5% block rate, which is higher than Joker's.
Yeah, and he contests shots at the rim basically like a power forward, which but based on our rim protection data, and so that again gives you a lot of versatility, and just kind of similar to Shai in that way, where you probably don't want him being the main on ball guy, but off ball he's able to provide some extra value and give you some scheme versatility, and he's not going to really get attacked, even though maybe at times you probably should, but well, so Ant, I mean, is the individual efficiency argument is part of it. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit on with him?
Yeah, we've seen a lot more from him in high leverage situations, and in big playoff games, big series, and whatnot. Cade, we've seen for one series last year against New York. So I think the theory of Cade as a top 6 player will be stress tested, shall we say, that this spring, right? Sort of the same way as Victor.
Yeah, I mean, Cade on Pistons plus 10.9, Ant on Wolves plus 3.3. And I mean, I'm sorry, do the rest of the Pistons have like way more talent than the Wolves? I don't think so. I mean, maybe you could say the overall defense fits together a little bit better, but Edwards, he's always been pretty middling in the impact metrics, and so I think that has to play in at some point. I could buy that Ant is a better playoff player than Cade, but I think Cade is just so much better in the regular season. And I think Ant too, like the Wolves are pretty inconsistent, and like he is, he's not locked in game to game the way I would say Cade is. Now he's made it to 2 conference finals in a row. Cade is probably still hungry at this point, but Ant's also 24. You'd think he'd still be pretty hungry. Luka, clear number 4 to you guys?
Yeah, I had him. I mean, I had him in a tier with 2 other guys, but yeah, to me he's pretty clear. I mean, he's so good offense. He's an offense unto himself. Sometimes a little too much, you can argue, but he definitely is. Defensively, I think, like, especially over these last few weeks, he's been better. And LA's played lineups that you think would get cooked, and they just haven't. And I think it's partly because Luka's been a little bit more solid. And then he gives you something on the glass, which is helpful too.
Yeah, I think, Danny and I had a pretty extensive Cade versus Luka conversation when we did our small forward rankings. I ultimately went with Luka, but I think that those 2 guys are in the same tier. Dan, you want to, for people who may not have listened to that, do you want to take us through the Luka versus Cade discussion? I know John doesn't even believe it's a discussion, but you and I can have it at least.
The argument in favor of Cade is that he's been the better regular season player this year. Cade Cunningham doesn't have quite the same role. No one does that Luka Doncic does within his offense. Cade Cunningham, 52% total creation, which factors in, you talked about the passing part of this, where potential assists and everything else, and his scoring as well. Cade Cunningham has a smaller role within the Pistons offense. He is way less efficient individually, but the Pistons have been better when he's been on the floor offensively than the Lakers have with Luka Doncic on the floor.
But that's because the Pistons get every rebound, right?
That's a part of the equation, but it's not the whole thing. The Lakers have vastly superior half-court offense of talent. I mean, they haven't had everybody available. But
I mean, it also, Luka, you're going to have zero transition, and Cade is gonna push the ball and give you something there. Yeah, half-court offense, you're right. Like, first shot half-court offense, Lakers are a lot better, but they also have three other creators and, largely play with mostly offensive players on the floor. So, no, I mean, I agree. Like, Luka is probably better offensively than Cade. And probably better offensively in the playoffs too, because he can take that step back. He's always going to get to a shot. I think he deals better with double teams. It's really, to me, the biggest argument against Luka is, if you're going to build a championship contender, you have to have very, very specific things around him. I think we saw that in Dallas. You got to have another ball handler who can also shoot. You got to have two really good 3-and-D guys, and you got to have a really good rim protecting center, possibly two. And if you don't have that, you're probably just not going to contend with Luka, because your defense is going to be too bad, or he's dependent still, I think, on having at least three good shooters next to him to really juice your offense a lot. And I think his defense still sucks. Like, he's okay one-on-one, but at around the basket, like, opponents are shooting 73% when he in theory contests it. Like, and he has to be the 4. He just is terrible as the low man. And he falls asleep. His transition defense horrible because he's bitching to the refs. I think, like, culturally too, you would have to say Cade is way better than him. Like, he's been a little better lately. Maybe just he's feeling better physically. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, Cade doesn't really get hurt, and Luka's had like a few things. So, like, I have Luka number 1. I definitely just feel like it's a conversation though, and it's more, I'm just not really like buying Luka that much at this point in time. Like, I don't think any of these guys are really like, number 1 on a championship team material. Like, automatically you just put the right pieces around them and you're contending every year.
It's one of the most fascinating parts of this conversation is that I feel better about the top 3 than I did before, but I think I feel worse about 4 through 10 than I did. Some of that will be injuries as players that we'll discuss further on, but part of it is, Luka's star has dropped a little bit for me, and I wonder what they'll do. But the other big thing for me with Luka versus Cade is Luka's accomplishments as a playoff performer. He's done it. I brought up that idea with Kawhi, and Luka's been the best player on a team that made the finals, that beat a very, very good team in the conference finals, and he's had these other big successes, whether the team won or not. He has done that. I want to talk a little bit about Giannis. So
quickly here before we do that, John, just want to get you on record here. You think we're completely insane? Just want to just want to make sure that we have that
I'm surprised y'all have Cade up this high. Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
There's a point in my list where I get to Cade, but it's not here.
Yeah. No, I just think he has fewer warts than some of these other guys. But we've been kind of taking it over here, Deni. So, John, do you want to talk about Giannis then? Because you did have him in this group too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought he was really good at the start of the year. Now, obviously, he's missed a bunch of games with injuries. I'm sure, this latest thing, like, the Bucks have to shut him down, right? Like, what are we even doing here? The whole team around him is miserable and everything, but he's still a hell of a player. I know he's dropped off a little on defense, and there are some concessions you have to make to what you put around him because of the style that he plays. But I mean, at the start of this year, he was putting up crazy numbers. And I think it's easy to forget that because the Bucks have been shitty and Giannis has been injured for a while, but he's still in this group for me that's just head and shoulders above the next group of guys. Like, when they play, like, Giannis and Kawhi are just so much more valuable than even the guys who are one tier down from this that we're going to start talking about.
Yeah, Danny, what are your thoughts on Giannis?
I really value what Giannis brings to the table. And unlike at certain other points in his past, I think that Giannis is being hurt by the overall team situation more than some of these other players. I think it's actually easier to build a great team around Giannis right now than Luka because of his defensive acumen. It's complicated, and the on-ball stuff with Lillard and all these other players in the past is a consideration, but he's doing so much this year, and it has gone very well. And I'm not a big believer in Doc Rivers. I'm not a big believer in a lot of their supporting talent, especially if we're talking about overall talent level relative to their compatriots. The Lakers, I think, have better talent non-star than the Bucks do, and I think that the Pistons do as well. And so for them to be at this level, it is concerning that it was very focused on the first part of the year, and since then, Giannis and the Bucks have been comparatively pedestrian, which is still comparing to a really high bar. So there are concerns there, and Giannis being in his 30s, this would presumably be his age 32 season. That gives me a little pause because players this physically gifted can sometimes have a decline, but he's done it recently enough that I believe it. So I have Giannis 4, Luka 5 for now, because I think that you can do it. I'm concerned, but I also think, you have to play a floor spacing center next to him. Yes, but you can do a lot of other stuff 1 through 3, and it can work pretty well.
Well, as long as all 3 of those guys can shoot, like you have to play 4 shooters with him, or it's just going to not work. That's basically how many minutes has he played without a floor spacing center or as a center? And I think with the game getting bigger, Giannis now can't really play center anymore. Like, he doesn't want to bang with guys, box out, defend. He's always been a pretty poor post defender. So there was a time back in 21 when their best lineup was Giannis at center. They'd throw 4 shooters next to him. They could switch everything. That won them that series against the Suns when they went to that. But now I don't think you can do that. So now you really have to have that shooting center who can also protect the rim. Otherwise, your defense is not going to be good enough, right? Yeah, you could throw Bobby Portis out there, but then your defense just won't be good enough. So you have to, there's a reason that they went so crazy for Miles Turner.
Exactly.
Because he was one of like 4 players in the league that you could put next to Giannis and actually really win. Could Giannis play with like a Steven Adams or Mitchell Robinson type of guy who just like sets a bunch of screens and like gets a bunch of offensive rebounds? Possibly, but like, is he really going to evolve after almost 10 years of playing this way now on another team? I hope we actually see what that looks like. It'll be fascinating, right? But then there's some of the leadership stuff. I think, the way he's handled this whole thing with Milwaukee, I do question that. Like, he always plays hard, but it's almost like taking on this weird performative aspect now. And like, I do think that what he's brought to the team emotionally has led to their implosion this year. But the biggest thing is he has not been healthy. And so when you throw in those fit issues, he's not the same defender, and that, if you optimize a system where you're going to play with a bunch of shooters around him, you probably have a pretty good offense, but your defense is never going to be good enough. I struggle to come up with how you're building a championship team around Giannis at this point. And that's even before, if he's really that great, wouldn't the Bucks have been better even when he was playing these last couple of years? Like, it's not like the East is some amazing, has all these amazing teams in it. So I have Giannis Loader. I have him at the top of this next group because he does put up crazy numbers. But yeah, I have him in tier 3. I think I controversially had him 5 last year. Mm-hmm. And I think, that was probably deemed to be crazy. I'm like, I think the last year's kind of borne that out, honestly. It certainly is the amount of production he's given. He shouldn't have been 5. He should have been lower.
As we're kind of transitioning to the next group of people, I want to acknowledge that if Jayson Tatum were 100% what he was before, he would have been in this group for me. Probably would have been high in this group for me. But
yeah, I would have had him above Luka, I would say. I would have him before. I had him 4 last year.
So I have him in this next group, but wanted to say that his game, and it's a different case because Jayson Tatum as the guy offensively, the way that Luka is, the way that Cade Cunningham is, that's not fantastic. But he is the superlative in all of these other ways. He's a wonderful defensive player, has positional versatility, and he fits in with other great offensive players, has done that with different surrounding talent over the years. He has benefited from a great collection of coaches during his time, but I think he has also helped make those things work. And so healthy Tatum would be in that group, probably would be fourth for me, but I have to count in what has happened. Achilles injuries have a real history. And even if I think I hope that he will get there, I can't say that's a certainty.
John?
Yeah, his other commonality with Luka, if we want to talk about negatives, is that he can tend to pound the shit out of the ball and slow them down. But yeah, I agree with you. I had Tatum in my next tier on a more positive note, since I just went in and hammered him right away. I had Tatum in my next tier as kind of almost like a placeholder. I mean, we'll see what he continues to look like as the season evolves. But I had 4 players in my next tier, 7, 8, 9, 10, and Tatum was the 4th one.
Yeah, I mean, only 146 minutes so far this year, but Celtics 14.8 net rating when he's on the floor, and that's even with him shooting 27% from 3. I agree with you, Danny. I don't think his offense is going to be quite as good. We've seen his shooting wax and wane at various points. I think this will probably be in a waning period given the rust. But he has looked as good as you could hope for coming back from this. Again, like I do move him down a tier just because of what we know about coming back from these injuries. But yeah, I had him right in this next group. I haven't really finalized my rankings below 6, I would say. But yeah, I think it's basically just taking what he was before, which would have been above all these guys except for Victor, Shai, and Jokic, and discounting that a little bit based on the injuries. Basically, he's not going to play back-to-backs for a while, etc. Yeah, and it just again, no matter what his individual statistics are, they always are just basically since 2019, they've just been awesome whenever he's played. So, and that's the case again. John, I want to hear who your next guy is. Like, is there anyone that you had that we haven't mentioned yet that was above all these guys? We kind of talked about Ant already. Anyone else that we haven't mentioned that you had above?
I had Ant 7, and the guy I always feel like I have to fight with you guys over is Donovan Mitchell. I had him number 8.
Yeah. I think he's made more of a case to be in this group. I thought he had kind of a down year last year, and he's actually, even though Cleveland's been worse, he's been better this season.
Yeah.
Tell me why you have him above, say. So who else do we have here? We got
tier
Brunson, we got Curry, we got KD.
Jalen Brown would probably argue that Jalen Brown belongs here.
Well, this isn't the ranking of two-way players.
Jalen Brown might argue Jalen Brown should be higher than this.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. That's true. But
yeah. So Mitchell. I mean, I think I have him pretty much right in this range. I would have him below Tatum, below Kawhi, probably still below Edwards. But like him, Brunson, and Curry, I think are pretty close to one another in that next group. I got no problem with Mitchell being in this range.
Yeah, so I had 7 Ant, 8 Mitchell, 9 Cade, 10 Tatum.
Okay. Yeah, so Danny, you got anything to say on Mitchell?
I think that Mitchell deserves a lot of credit for his growth this year. Last year, I argued that Donovan Mitchell was the second best Cav offensively, and Darius Garland had this huge season. Darius Garland has not had that huge a season at this point, and the Cavs offense has still been very good. And Evan Mobley, who I'll bring up in a little bit, hasn't had the same year, but Donovan has done that. I have him my tier is bigger than John's is, and I have him within that tier. So we could talk about that part later if we want to. And with Mitchell, I have a couple of concerns. One of them is just his defensive limitations, and you have to accommodate that. He's a smaller player, so you can. It's not like Jokic, who his flaws are harder to overcome, but you do. And then the other part is Donovan Mitchell is a playoff performer, because we're getting into this range where the guys have warts, but you also like one of the things that can push somebody above. One of them is prior talent level. So you could think about somebody like Kawhi or somebody else. The other one is that capacity. And Donovan Mitchell, he's had these incredible playoff performances at different moments in his career, but in the biggest moments, I don't think he's been huge. And then there's also this weird dynamic that happened last year, and it's not the first time, where it seemed in the end, whenever his team's season ended, that he was totally out of gas. And this is not in the NBA Finals. That Donovan Mitchell has never made the NBA Finals. And so this idea that whether he's playing so hard or whatever this is, and never playing in back-to-backs in the playoffs, that if he has to be the guy, and they have James Harden, they have all these other players this year, where does that go? Because ideally, players in this range, 7 to 13, whatever we're going to talk about, they can be the best player on at least a conference finals team. And I think Mitchell can be that, but I worry a little bit about this kind of overall stamina thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Mitchell is pretty clearly better in the regular season. You and I both ranked Edwards just ahead of Mitchell in our shooting guard rankings. But I think you'd have to say in the regular season, Mitchell has been better than Edwards. Jalen Brunson, maybe Steph Curry, just not as reliable. I have all those guys in the same group. I think you can make reasonable arguments for all of those players. But yeah, I'll second what you said, Deni. And I'll add to that he's point guard size with point guard defense, but he's not a point guard. You have to really put another primary ball handler next to him, whether it was Garland, whether it's James Harden now. And because we saw with Garland out, he couldn't really fulfill point guard responsibilities, right? That part of him getting worn down was just bringing the ball up against the pressure of the Indiana Pacers. And so if you now have to put another ball handler next to him, in almost all likelihood, that player is also not going to be a great defensive player. And now you're going to have a small backcourt, and they ran into a lot of problems. Like Kenny Atkinson did a great job of getting them to switch, or the way JB Bickerstaff solved that problem was starting Isaac Okoro at the 3 with 2 bigs, but then the offense was never going to be good enough, and Mitchell was going to get blitzed all the time. So I do think he brings some team building issues that other small ball handling guards like Edwards obviously can guard his position. Steph Curry, just fine. He's a 1. Jalen Brunson is just a 1. And Mitchell, he's not that great of a dribbler. Like, he's got moves if you kind of like get him into the scoring area, and he can hit a bunch of buttons on the controller, but he's not just a natural ball handler bringing the ball up. He can get his pocket picked at half court. He's got to like put his back to goal. And so then, to go through his health record as well, 21 with the Jazz. He's dealing with like this ankle issue. They end up getting upset, admittedly, without Mike Conley too, right? So Mike Conley's out. He can't really shift the point guard as well. He wears down. 22, he gets like bilateral hamstring soreness. He has these twice per playoff series. He just like goes down and you're like, oh man, is this it? You kind of got that from him. 23, they just got beat by the Knicks. In 5, they got Thibodeau'd by Thibodeau. 24, calf injury, doesn't make it through the Celtics series. And then 25, again, he just is like completely out of gas by the end of game 2. Just like you think that like something happened to him. He slipped on a banana peel or something, and he just like can't even breathe by the end of the game. So yeah, I probably would still have him definitely below Edwards, definitely below Tatum. And yeah, between Brunson and Curry, I'm not sure who I would go with. Maybe we can talk about that.
The thing in these playoffs, I mean, he has mostly been really good up until the point where he started having physical problems.
Right.
So it's weird. Like he's delivered on one level and not on another.
Yeah. I mean, was there anything else you wanted to say on Mitchell, John?
I mean, I think you pretty much summed it up. Like he's just I think he's a really dynamic scorer, just because, he can shoot with range off the dribble, going left, going right. And it's just, that makes him a really tough cover. And it makes him able to get to, shall we say, playoff shots where teams take away, a lot of your easier actions and can still get to stuff late in the clock. I think that makes him really valuable.
Yeah, I would agree there. So who was next for you, John, that we haven't mentioned yet?
So we sort of get to, I split this tier because we were talking about doing a top 10. But my 11, 12, 13 are sort of like a tier 4B to the 4A before. And I would put Durant, Curry, and Brunson in that tier.
Yeah, KD, I guess that's the interesting one.
I mean, him going to Houston, basically being the point guard at 38 or whatever he is kind of amazing. They have crap spacing there, and he's still been able to function at a pretty good level. I've actually been pretty impressed.
Yeah, I don't know. I what have you thought of KD this year? I mean, we keep skipping over Brunson and Curry, but what are your thoughts on KD's performance this year? Does he deserve to be in this range? I think preliminarily I had him in the next group of guys.
I had him a little bit below as well, and it's close. I mean, Kevin Durant's one hell of a player, and he's been efficient as always this year, 63% true shooting and a couple more big baskets, and we round up to 64. He's had a large role within the Rockets offense, and it's been a more challenging fit than he's had in some other situations because they have some limited spacing. They have guys who can't do everything that you need them to do. And the Rockets overall, I would say their offense, especially once Fred VanVleet went down, and it has been about what I expected, maybe a little better. And I brought up coaching for Giannis, and I don't think Ime Udoka is a great offensive coach. I think he's a very solid overall coach, but he's not creative in those ways. So I think that a different surrounding talent, different coaching could do more of what Kevin Durant has done so well. But there are a couple of demerits for me with Durant. One of them is I think that he is a capable defensive player and can, when activated, can do well, but he is becoming, and he's been better for his age than I would have expected. It's a little bit of a challenging fit because you don't want him guarding the other team's best wing, which is fine, but you also doesn't do as much of the help stuff. And so to build a great defense, you need to make some decisions, and the Rockets defense with him has been plenty good. And then the other one is, even though he's better at 37 than almost anyone has ever been, you still have to factor that in, that he's going to age. He's going to age a little bit more. I think we'll see that more on the defensive end than the offensive end. And then the other concern with KD, and this I'm fixated because it was so ridiculous. The pressure, the way that he just couldn't handle the pressure that the Lakers, the doubling that they put on him, making the pass. He eventually got a little bit better, and his teammates missing a billion open shots was not Kevin Durant's fault. But the idea of scalability with him offensively, he does a lot, but how does that work? So he's great, has been otherworldly when there's another dominant force next to him. But if you need him to be the guy, it can be good. It can even be very good, but I'm not sure it can be great anymore.
Yeah, I guess to me, I do think I have concerns about what he means for your culture. That it does seem like everywhere he goes, even though I've certainly have enjoyed my interactions with him personally over the years, that everywhere he goes, things kind of fall apart a little bit. I mean, you see that in Phoenix, and he was like, "Yeah, I got blamed when I got traded away," and but then he, like, this burner account things that he hasn't denied comes out where he's just like shitting on all of his teammates this year, and I'm just not. The reason I have him a little bit below is I don't think that Kevin Durant as your best player equals automatic playoff team at this point. I mean, Houston has a lot of other talent. It's kind of weirdly distributed offensively, to be sure, but they have another all-star in Şengün. That you've got, you've got an all defense level guy and Amen Thompson. Like, they've had one of the deeper teams in the league as well. They have a lot of athleticism. They have a good coach, even if not a offensively creative one. And so, yeah, like, they're going to be a playoff team this year. But I also, and I'm very impressed with the number of minutes he's been able to play this year. I just don't think that's necessarily going to continue, nor should it, frankly. I mean, if you should be at this point, him on the skip some back-to-backs, play 32 minutes a game plan. Otherwise, his defense starts to fall apart. So, yeah, I had him in the next group. I think Brunson and Curry are, if those guys are healthy, I think, you have a solid playoff team. We saw with KD on Phoenix last year that it wasn't necessarily the case as the leader of a team that you're going to make the playoffs all the time with him. But John, you want to respond to that since we've been disagreeing with you with every single thing that you say?
I think you guys might have actually convinced me a little bit that I might have overrated his offensive contributions. So relative to the part that was hard was relative to Brunson and Curry, because those guys do really guarantee you a very good offense when they're playing.
Yeah, I guess with Steph, it's just, he's now 38 and he's got this knee tendonitis, and you just he was having one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a 37-year-old, but then that season ended, as it tends to happen for 37-year-olds. And just going, and obviously he got hurt in the playoffs last year too. He had been pretty durable recently up until that point. And I still think he plays like amazing winning basketball. I thought he was awesome in the playoffs last year, even when his shot wasn't falling. Like that game 7, like the level of just like winning plays he was able to make given his size was pretty impressive. That he just ran a really athletic Rockets team into the ground by the end of that series was incredible. And so, yeah, I still think if he's out there, he could even possibly be at the top of this group. It's just, you got to discount it for, the fact that he's probably has a pretty decent chance of missing substantial time now in his career.
Yeah, I agree on all of that. And then Brunson's case, I think, is actually pretty similar, where when Jalen Brunson is on the floor and he is the Knicks' best offensive player, their offense has been very good. And that's been the case for a number of years now. So Brunson's offensive rating on is a 120.2. That is fractions of a point behind Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And they have Karl-Anthony Towns, but they have a lot of other players who are pretty dependent talents, and they don't get the turnovers and the possession game the way that the Thunder do. They do have offensive rebounding when Mitch is on the floor, but some of that. And Brunson, he's a fascinating playoff player. We'll hopefully get a lot more data on that. But years ago, I used the idea of the him alone test, which is basically if you plug this player on a team and you don't know who the surrounding talent is, you don't know who the coach is, can you believe that they'll have a high level offense? And for me, the answer with Jalen Brunson is still a yes. And so if you qualify for that, especially with an enthusiastic yes, you are one of the 10 best players in the league. And I find it fascinating that the all-in-one metrics really, really hate Jalen Brunson's defense this year. I don't think it's...
Yeah. It's sucked up until the last month and a half, I would say.
But in terms of relative to his compatriots and all that type of stuff, for example, Luka, in part probably because of rebounding, Luka's, I think, meaningfully better the last time I looked at it in terms of defensive DPM and all stuff like that. Luka's a different point of failure than Jalen Brunson is. And so, but Brunson as an offensive player, he does that. And I wonder about the resiliency of his offense against high-level competition, because so much of it is foul drawing and sometimes the officiating changes in the playoffs. But they were going to beat the Celtics last year, even if Jayson Tatum hadn't gotten hurt. Yeah. And a lot of that should go on Jalen Brunson's brilliance and how well they were doing. Mm-hmm. The Celtics, a team that I believe all three of us think very, very highly of. And Jalen Brown was hurt and all these other things, but that is still that's still a pretty strong arrow in Jalen Brunson's quiver.
Yeah, is there anything you want to add on Brunson, John?
I don't think I have a lot. You sort of mentioned it. It's the Knicks can devolve into Brunson ball.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's a reason they do that. He's really good.
Yeah, and it is interesting because, he's never been over that 60% true shooting barrier that you look at for really efficient players, especially a guard. Everybody other than Cade that we've mentioned typically is there. But the Knicks are just a metronomic 120 offensive rating with him on the floor. I think each of the last at least 3 years, maybe even 4. And, because you're okay, well, how he's not that efficient of a scorer, but he's also there's only kind of okay as a distributor. He's actually been doing more of that this year. His passing creation is 15%. That's kind of just average for a point guard. So he's not this heliocentric guy where he's just Luka running, or Cade just setting everyone up, running every possession through him, as far as just hitting all the buttons and diming up guys when you try to take stuff away. But yet their offense is always awesome. Part of that I think is that he avoids turnovers a lot, which is pretty useful. So I just ultimately, and the Knicks have been, a top 8 team in basketball with him as the best player for the last 3 years. So you really he has to be here. I think. Let me ask you this, John. So I think we've talked about now 13 players.
Yes.
Who would you say, because we're running relatively short on time here, who would be our most controversial omission from this top 13 that we haven't talked about yet? Maybe you disagree about that player, but in terms of like what their popular conception of this guy is.
Oh, it's got to be Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, people are talking about him in the MVP race and stuff, and he's really good. He is a really good two-way player. But when you get to this level of like, is he really an engine guy? You know, where him alone as Danny said, like,
Yeah.
like I don't really like, he's not super efficient, takes a lot of tough twos, isn't really a great passer. They play better when he's off the court. Like, there's just a lot of dings that add up that kind of push him down into the next tier.
I think the argument, and he was hurt last year in the playoffs, but obviously was the Eastern Conference and NBA Finals MVP 2 years ago, admittedly in relatively short series. But I think I'm open to the idea that he's more resilient in the playoffs because he's a pretty good isolation player. And so the fact that he's 57% true shooting in the regular season, like that holds up in the playoffs more.
Right.
And then to be someone that you can put as the primary option on the other team's best scorer, he's not going to make plays off the ball at all. But to just say, yeah, you go guard him, the rest of us will worry about the team defense for the role that he has, that's pretty valuable, I would say. He's not really that great of a transition player anymore. They don't do anything in transition. The Celtics, they're like the slowest pace in the league. So yeah, I think he's a really good player. And the on-off stuff, like, most of that difference is in terms of their defense. I mean, they still actually are better offensively when he's off the floor, which is, that is kind of a ding. But yeah, I don't think like he's so bad on defense that, they're just way better without him. Like their bench, they got a lot of good defensive players coming off the bench who are more focused on defense as well. So, I mean, I think he's a clear top 20 player. But no, I don't think, and certain guys have been injured and stuff. So yeah, him making second team All NBA this year I'd be totally fine with that. But still, I think there's been moments when he's been way over his head as a shooter this year too. Like he was shooting like over 50% for mid range for a while. I'm not sure that's really him.
Yeah.
As well.
I was at that game against the Clippers where he made every single shot and scored 50. It was insane.
Yeah. Danny, same thing for you. Who's the next player that you think it would be controversial that we don't have as this high, if there is one? I don't know that there is one necessarily. But
I have somebody in this tier that we haven't discussed.
Ooh,
and I'm the only one, and that's Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
And Evan Mobley, it's not based on what he has done this year. If you were to say what is Evan Mobley in the 25-26 season, he would be below this standard. But I had him 5th in MVP last year, and he was 23. He would be 25 in this exercise. And it's very disappointing offensively that Evan Mobley hasn't brought it back, that he hasn't been that player. And just so people can remember, 63% true shooting on 23 usage last year. And that's 63 is down to 59 this year. And that's a really big
also an earned defensive player of the year, though obviously Wembanyama getting the DVT opened the door for him.
And so Mobley, I think he's either the second or third best defensive player in basketball. And that is immensely important. And I think he's a superior offensive player to Chet Holmgren, who I think is the other player who's in that conversation. And
I don't know if I can agree with you on that, of him being a superior offensive player to Chet Holmgren, just because Chet shoots it in a way that Mobley just doesn't.
That's fair.
I think neither of them are guys you're really giving the ball to. So give me the guy who's spacing the floor instead. I agree with you. He's better than Chet on defense. So.
And so I have Mobley above that for now, in part because Mobley has played at that level recently enough, and he's young enough. Now, it's a huge disappointment that, considering Darius Garland's frustrations and availability this year, that they needed somebody to step up and the Mobley didn't. That sucks. But I'm willing to acknowledge that, especially for somebody who's as great as he is defensively, that he's it's a special thing. And I mean, I considered putting Chet Holmgren in this tier too. It's just that those sort of players who can be the defensive centerpiece and are positive offensive players, those are extremely hard to come by, not only now, but historically.
What do you think of Mobley, John?
I had him a little further down. I did have him in my top 20, but yeah, just offensively, just not enough juice. And like just watching teams play drop coverage and just then completely ignore Mobley at the 3-point line is like kind of depressing.
Yeah, it does. If he's not going to shoot it as well as he did last year, now you are running into some issues with your offense playing him with another center. And I think he could play center some. I don't know if you want him to do that full time. He's been asked to do that a lot. I think he adds that maybe in a way that Chet doesn't. And he still is one of the better switch defenders at his position. Like, he's a great defensive player. I just wonder, Danny, of like, there's 1 year that's the outlier, which was last year. And I agree with you. I think his season a year ago was totally underrated, but he just wasn't able to continue that. And I think he's been more aggressive lately as a scorer inside, which is part of, even more so than the shooting. That's what really made me so interested in what he was doing last year, was his ability to just handle the ball, get right to the rim, and just dunk on people who were smaller than him. But I can't quite get there. I mean, he was in my next group, this tier 4, but I can't put him in the same group as Donovan Mitchell, Brunson, Curry. So this is my next group of guys. We've mentioned most of them: Holmgren, KD, Jamal Murray, Jalen Brown, and then I did have to ultimately go with Tyrese Maxey in this group, even though I think I've been lower on him than some. He to me, John, would be a pretty controversial omission, given that I think probably most people, not me, would have had him second team All-NBA before he got hurt.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he's been a really dynamic scorer, certainly, for the Sixers. 2 players we haven't mentioned.
Okay.
I have a placeholder here for Tyrese Halliburton.
Sure.
Yeah. He's got. I think he's got to be in this group 4 as well for me. In the mid-teens.
And then the guy I had one spot ahead of Maxey was Jalen Johnson of the streaking Atlanta Hawks.
Wow. Yeah, Jalen Johnson's a top 20 player, huh? Okay, make the case. I'm not there with him at all right now.
I just think he fills so many lines. It's kind of incredible. He is basically a point guard playing power forward. He's the leading rebounder, right? And then he's also basically the go-to guy on the offensive end, and really like the main distributor too. Like the offense is the point guard, the alleged point guard, Dyson Daniels, setting a screen for the alleged power forward, Jalen Johnson, while the alleged center, Onyeka Okongwu, stands at the 3-point line. And it's kind of wacky that way, but it works. He's gotten really good at his floater game and like some of the midi stuff. He's gotten more reliable from 3. I mean, 35% now. Been pretty durable. He has missed some games this year, but relatively durable, can play high minute loads in the games he plays. Now, he's another guy, you talk about efficiency, like he's 58.5 true shooting. He's not a guy who's in the 60s. A little bit prone to making bad passes, certainly, as a distributor. Defensively, I think he's not where he was a year ago.
I'd agree with that.
Just because the offensive load on him has been what it has. I think he's let's say taking more plays off or whatever. So those are all dings against him, but hopefully we'll get a chance to see in a playoff series and not like a 1-game event in Miami. But I think he has a real case to be like top 20 for sure.
I think that Jalen Johnson, his importance to the team is significant, and I think that he deserves credit for what he's done with the Hawks. An incredible player development story, My concern with Jalen Johnson is you get into this range and you might end up with a player who's better than you, and ideally a player who's better than you offensively. Where does Jalen Johnson's game offensively go then? Because he's a better shooter now than he was, but he's not a great shooter, and he's done all this stuff on ball. So if you played him next to, let's just throw a guy out there, Jalen Brunson. If you have Jalen
okay,
Johnson,
how about Trae Young?
Yeah,
Like he did a lot of this stuff next to Trae, just as either the secondary ball handler or the guy who was screening for Trae and then doing stuff out of short rolls and all that. So I've seen him do that. Like, I guess like he can, yeah. If you got a better player than Jalen Johnson, I think he absolutely still would have a pretty vital offensive role.
Yeah, I think his shooting, Danny, is maybe a little bit underrated in how it's progressed. He shoots 78% from the foul line, so I think you can believe it's reasonable. He's shooting 35% from three, and that includes, about a third of those being self-created. And he's got the ball all the time too, so I'm not as worried about that. I think it's really him as a scorer, I would say, where I don't think he's like that great as a scorer. And like if you switch on him, is he going to be able to beat that guy one-on-one? That's kind of my question. And just he hasn't been doing this for that long. I actually would say, to me, of the guys who are like this, I think Deni Avdija actually has a better case for being in this range than Johnson. I think Avdija is just, his drive game is just a little bit harder to deal with. And they're probably about the same as off-ball shooters. I kind of like Deni maybe a little bit better there. He's been dealing with this back injury lately, so that's kind of skewed the numbers. But I felt like just watching Jalen Johnson versus watching Deni Avdija at their best this year, I felt like Avdija was just harder for a defense to deal with because his drive game is getting to the foul line. The way that he's boosted the offense for a Blazers team that has nobody else. Like, I mean, the Hawks and Blazers basically have the same offensive rating with Johnson on versus Avdija on, and Avdija's had no shooting, no talent around him basically the whole season. So I actually think Avdija's offense has just been a little more dominating than Johnson.
Okay.
And so I would have him like, I mean, I think they're very similar players. But yeah, I would have Avdija a little bit above there. I mean, I'm probably not giving Johnson quite enough respect. I would actually say another guy who we need to talk about is Devin Booker, just because of what he's been before. And, up until last year would have clearly been a top 15 type of player. We haven't mentioned him yet. Why is that, Danny?
It's curious because Devin Booker's team is doing so much better this year. One of the big success stories despite trading Kevin Durant, but Devin Booker hasn't been as key to that success as I expected. 58% true shooting, has a huge role within the offense, but when Booker's on the floor, the Suns offense just hasn't quite been that great. 115.5 offensive rating when Devin Booker's on the floor. They are better with him on than when he's off. Yeah, but
they actually have like a lot of pretty efficient play finishers out there on this group too, right? Like pretty good shooters, spot up guys. They got Mark Williams as a center, is pretty efficient. Like they should be able to, if he's really that good, I think that number should be higher. And it used to be higher as well back in the day when they were a reliable 120 when he was on the floor. What about you, John? What are your thoughts on Booker?
Yeah, he got on the All-Star team because the Suns are a surprise, right? But I don't think his year has been that special. He's like low-key, not a very good three-point shooter. Draws a lot of fouls for a guy who shoots.
Yeah, he's really reliant on getting to the foul line for his efficiency this year.
Yeah, and he makes him. He also, like, for a guard, he fouls a lot. Like every time you watch the Suns, it's like, oh, Booker has 5. Like, is it just me? Am I watching the wrong games? Or and he's missed some time with injuries too, and that's happened more the last couple of years. So I think it's a combination of those things.
Yeah, and I've watched him for a lot of this year. He just wasn't getting by people. Now, I think he's looked better lately in that regard. Like, he had a great game against the Celtics a couple nights ago. So maybe it's just some of these injury issues are preventing him from that. But, he's taken a lot of hard shots. His shot quality is 49% field goal. And he's only adding 1 point to that with his actual shot making. So 50% field goal. I mean, that's just not good enough And again, he's getting to the foul line a crazy amount, 8.5 per 36. And that's great, but I also think that can go away in a playoff setting as well. So, I think he's, I'd have him below Maxey, below a fair number of guys. Like, I didn't think he should have been on the All-Star this team, All-Star team this year. Maxey, just to tell you guys a little bit about why I'm not as high on him. I do think his defense has improved, but again, you get to that. How has the offense performed with him on the floor? 115 is pretty middling, I would say. Now, Maxey does play a million minutes unless he has a hand injury. Like he was on pace to average more minutes per game than basically anyone in like 10 years. But yeah, I think ultimately, like, just not quite as good as a distributor, not really at his best unless he has another like hub center to play off of as well. I just like your him alone test, Danny. I don't think he passes it. So I think he's really more of a solid number 2 as an offensive player, not a number 1. And he's not providing the defensive value to move beyond that.
While we're on the topic of Philly, Joel Embiid is just not a top 20 guy.
I mean, for 1 month a year. So this is the way I described it.
That's the thing, right? I mean, I didn't have it in mind. I just wanted to put that out to the group.
Yeah, this is how I described it. Because Danny and I were like, okay, where would he rank in our center rankings if that January he puts that together for a whole year? Like, he's probably number 3, right? He would be. I think his defense is going to just be bad regardless during the regular season. But that guy that he was in January, that's an all NBA level of player, even considering the defense. But we were like, okay, over the next 3 years with Embiid, you're hoping to get maybe one of the next 3 years he plays 50 games and he's healthy in the playoffs. That's that's like your baseline assumption. So it's not just he's got this knee, we got to manage it, but we can kind of keep it under control, shut him down for a little bit if it gets swollen, then he's okay again. It's like, it's just this laundry list of other things. It's his other knee, it's his ankle, it's his oblique. So every 2 weeks it's a new thing. So you really just can't count on it at all. Let's see if there's anyone else that I'm really like that fired up to talk about in this group. No, I don't think so. I think we could probably. You want to do risers and fallers here? I mean, what about Jamal Murray? We haven't talked about him yet. I have him higher than Maxey, actually.
I had him right next to Maxey.
Yeah,
like I couldn't decide if he should be one higher or one lower. But I mean, playoff Murray is a real thing though, so I'd probably go higher.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a real thing last year, and it kind of wasn't.
It's been a real thing frequently enough for me to respect it.
Well, I mean, he's played 5 playoffs, and he's been playoff Murray in 2 of them.
No, is that right?
2020 and 23, 19, not really. Missed 21 and 22. 24, I mean, I think his inability to play well is the biggest reason they lost to the Wolves. And then last year, I think he wasn't able to deliver really against the Thunder either. So now he's in much better shape now. He's playing much better. He's finally kind of solved this thing of like their offense being atrocious when he plays without Jokic, and then the additive nature when he plays with Jokic. They're in like the high 120s. In offensive rating. And I think
it's really interesting to me that Adelman tries to play them together.
Yeah. I mean, because I think probably the math just shows that they're going to there was a point, I haven't checked it recently, but they were like a 131 with those 2 guys on the court earlier this year. And he doesn't get attacked as much. I mean, maybe he does just because there's no one else, but like he is not. He just has more size in the post than someone like Maxey or Steph or Brunson or something. Yeah. And he's not a number 1, but he's an awesome number 2. He is real. And he plays in that a way as a number 2 that some guys can't play off the ball. So,
yeah.
Using cleaning the glasses garbage time filter, Jokic plus Jamal Murray, 129.5 offensive rating this year, plus 13 net rating.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's bonkers.
All right, so risers and fallers for you, John, from last year.
Risers and fallers. Let's see. So obviously Tatum dropped. Risers. I mean, the big risers. Victor.
Yeah. Yeah, he went from
Cade.
8 to 3 for me. Yeah,
I
Cade,
mean,
I was like,
did we even talk about Cade last year?
I mean, barely. I had him probably in the 20s last year. I
Yeah.
mean, the Pistons were just kind of making their surge at this point. They didn't have a very good offense last year. I think they've been better this year. So, and I thought he was solid in last year's playoffs, but obviously the Pistons rise, he's been a big part of that. So yeah, he's a huge riser. We didn't mention LeBron James at all. I had him 12th last year.
KD's a pretty big follower for me too. I had KD 8th last year, top of the tier with LeBron, and he's much higher on my list this year than LeBron is, but it's still a pretty big fall for a player who hasn't played that poorly. It's just I'm kind of evaluating him a little bit differently now.
Kawhi Leonard, hilariously at age 34, was a big riser for me. Like I had him in the 15 to 21 range last year. Darius Garland was someone else that I had as a top 20 player last year. Who he's I'm liking what I'm seeing from him with the Clippers, but obviously you had to lower him. I mean, Damian Lillard, he was still a top 20, 25 guy. Jaren Jackson Jr., John, I had him as in the like I thought had him making All NBA last year, and obviously that hasn't happened. Kyrie Irving was still probably a top 25 player last year. Obviously, we haven't talked about him at all.
I had Anthony Davis 12th last year.
Yeah, that's a huge. Yeah, I had him at 9.
That's one. Yeah.
Man, Nico sure bought high on him. Chet has moved up quite a bit for me. He's in the top 20 now, which he was just coming back from the injury last year. We haven't talked about OKC or we haven't talked about Jalen Williams.
Jalen Williams, yeah.
Who I probably would have had him top 15 after last year's playoffs, and he's had some injury issues this year. I think I had him in the 20s last year. Let's see. Yeah. Jalen Brown is a big riser for me. Wasn't having that great of a year last year. Maxey is a big riser. All right, anyone for you, Danny?
I mean, we should just talk about Victor Wembanyama again, going from not only from 7 to 3, but becoming that other guy. And
two actually, two
for one of us. So here's I wanted to end this with one little question for each of us. If you had to guess right now where you would rank Victor Wembanyama when we do this exercise a year from now, what is the best guess on what number? We can just each guess for ourselves. I think that's probably more fair. I'll start because I've been thinking about this question. My guess is I'll have him second. I think it's a distinct chance he'll be 1.
Yeah, probably most likely would be second, but yeah, I mean, if they win the championship this year, he'll be number 1. And they could easily do that. And like him against Shai, him against Jokic. I mean, that's the beauty is like we could see all these guys matching up again in the playoffs this year. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating. What do you think, John?
I would say my median estimate has no chance of happening because I think he's either going to be 1 or 2, or he's going to be injured and be like 7.
Yeah. Are we overstating the injury thing with him?
I mean, I've done a lot of research on very tall players, and they don't have long careers. So I would be, if I was in San Antonio, yes, I would worry about that and think about this era with a little more urgency as a result of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they kind of did by bringing in De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah. I believe that nobody taller than 7'2" has played more than 1,000 career games.
Well, wow. Kareem was listed.
Kareem was 7'2".
Most people said he was taller than that. I don't know whether to believe that or not. Like Bill Simmons insists that Kareem was like 7'5". If you see pictures of him next to guys who are 7 feet, like you can kind of believe that. But yeah, and maybe he is kind of like, I mean, Kareem was like doing all this yoga and stuff back then. Like I do think of all the 7 5 guys that there have been, I give him the best chance of staying healthy just due to the way his body is. He doesn't put too much weight on. He's obviously insanely dedicated to everything in a way that guys haven't been. But yeah, he is fighting against the tide of history. I agree with you on that, John. But like he had the DVT. I don't think that's going to recur. He hasn't had any remotely major injury other than that.
Yeah, because
so
you worry about. I mean, the thing that gets all these guys are lower extremity injuries, the feet and knees.
Yeah, like foot stuff. He hasn't had anything like that. So.
Yeah.
No knee stuff really at all. Like, I don't even recall him ever being on like, he's missing 1 game for a sore knee or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, oof, yeah. This is going to be a fascinating playoffs. I mean, I'm almost rooting for him to not win this year, just because if he does, it's like, well, it's all over now. Like, I want to witness the drama of him continuing to struggle, getting over the hump and evolving. But I think part of the reason I ranked him number 2 is I think that the league adapting to him in the playoffs might be a bigger adaptation than him adapting to the rest of the league in the playoffs.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is fun. Thanks for staying long here, John. We appreciate it. And we want to encourage all y'all to subscribe on YouTube. If you haven't done that yet, John will even be within the frame 61% of the time next time we do this. This is more of an audio product, that I will admit. And of course, please consider subscribing to Dunc'd On Prime. Link to that is in the show notes. And Danny, I will be back. We're going to do point guard rankings, which will be a fascinating one on Monday, and lots of great stuff coming. Stay with us throughout the playoffs here on Dunc'd On, and on YouTube. Please give us a like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell as well. Talk to y'all next time.